the road is long, and we're going to get tired a lot. I'm 45 years old, and I thought I was doing something. But I just buried my grandmother, 92. She lived through the days when she couldn't cast a vote. She lived to see her daughter become the first African-American woman in American history to be nominated to be governor. But she did not live. She did not live to see me take an oath of office. Now, I don't know which oath is coming up next.
What did you say when they said, "Run, Stacey, run"?
I said, stop talking. I couldn't finish my speech.
Okay, that's an audience at the National Action Network convention yesterday responding to former Democratic Georgia gubernatorial nominee Stacey Abrams when she said she didn't know which oath was coming up next as she weighs a bid for the U.S. Senate, the White House, or perhaps a rematch for governor. And Stacey Abrams, as you can see, joins us now. She's the author of the book entitled Lead from the Outside: How to Build Your Future and Make Real Change. We're going to talk all about the book. No worries there. But are you considering a run for the White House? When you should jump in.
I am thinking about it. I truly am. I think that the timing for me is first deciding about the Senate, because I do think you cannot run for an office unless you know that's the job you want to do. I don't think you use offices as stepping stones. And so my first responsibility is to determine whether a Senate run is right for me. And then the next conversation for myself will be, if not the Senate, then what else?
Okay, but that's a pretty quick timeline, though, on a decision.
It is. Well, I think the Senate decision is going to be pretty short term. I intended to do it in March, but because of my book tour, I had to push it back. But I do want to make a decision this month. And then I don't think you actually have to make a decision about the White House before the fall.
Oh, okay.
So what goes into that calculus for you of the field's getting bigger by the day? We've got Tim Ryan, we're expected, the congressman from Ohio, we read today, he's going to get in the race. There are others we expect the number will cross 20. Does the size of the field, do you view that as a detriment to you, or is that an advantage?
I think it's a neutral. I mean, we have to remember, in 92, you had 19 people running at a certain point. And Bill Clinton was at the very bottom of the pack. He was about 1%. I think Paul Tsongas was the lead. For me, the issue is this. As someone who, before I ran for office, ran campaigns, I understand that running for office means, can you amass the resources, can you organize the people, and do you have a credible platform that can resonate? And I don't believe that there is an imperative to do so before September. I think it's important that people are having these conversations now, but I'm not going to make a decision driven by other people's timelines.
Before September? So you could wait till September to get in the race?
I think that's the drop date. I don't think the drop date is earlier than that, because the average voter is not paying attention until Labor Day.
I was curious about this because in the book, which I loved and found quite inspiring, you talk about your planning process.
Yes.
And you really plan, and it's impressive, and it's something that I certainly can learn a lot about, but it doesn't seem like you would be prone to making a rash decision about your political future. But 6 months, that seems like that's Stacey Abrams' lead time.
Well, I think if you're going to run, you need to be ready to start a campaign. And so to suggest that I'm going to run if I haven't figured out how I'm going to win, that makes no sense. I don't think running for office is a vanity exercise. If you're going to run, you need to be ready to win. And I tend to operate both sequentially and in parallel. So I'm thinking about everything. But for me, the responsible duty is to first decide if the Senate is the right job, because that is, I think, the most immediate question. And Chuck Schumer and the senators that I've spoken with have done an amazing job of talking to me about how important this role is.
And let me weigh in on that. I think you've got a really hard decision. I think you're an amazing leader, and I am so proud of who you are and what you've accomplished. Say that first. But the difference between leadership in the United States Senate between David Perdue and Stacey Abrams is night and day. I mean, he is a sycophant for Donald Trump. He is all things Trump. He's not even thoughtful about it. And I really do think that it will be very hard for us to do what we want to do in this country as long as Mitch McConnell is running the show in the United States Senate. So I want you to do whatever your ambition and your planning leads you. And by the way, I use the word ambition because I'm proud of your ambition.
Absolutely.
Women need to own their ambition. I think your ambition is terrific. But I wanted just to and I know that's the pressure you're feeling. I remember when I didn't want to run for the Senate, and I was having Chuck Schumer calling me and saying it's about America. And we
really
took
good at
the
it.
Senate that year, and we took the Senate by 3 narrow races in Virginia, Montana, and Missouri, and that was in 2006. I think we could repeat that in 2020, but maybe not without you.
I would say this. Number one, Leader Schumer has been nothing but gracious. He's been very intense and very intentional.
That's it.
But I appreciate that, and I appreciate the input. As I say, my job is to make sure, 1, I'm the right person for the job, 2, that it's the right time, and 3, that this is the right job that I need to hold. And so, I had a Lotus 1, 2, 3 spreadsheet when I was in college.
There you go.
I've updated to Excel.
I love the planning.
So I hear that, and I share your disappointment about David Perdue.
Lead from the outside,
Yes.
how to build your future and make real change. Tell us about it.
This began as a how-to guide. I was getting lots of questions from students and from women's groups and from communities of color about how I'd made it into the role that I had as a Democratic leader. I was the first woman to lead a party in the history of Georgia, the first African American to lead in the House. I was giving a series of speeches, I was talking to people, and finally I thought, let me just write it down. I didn't want to write a memoir because I did not think that I had the sufficient life history to warrant a memoir. So what I tried to do is a hybrid, tell my story but use it as an exercise in how do you do things better, how do you understand mistakes that you made. The first chapter is about dare to be ambitious. I want people to understand that ambition, especially for people from the outside, is critical, because if you can't dream about what you want and plan for it, it will never come to fruition.
All right, so stick with us. We have Casey Hunt and Yasmin Masugian standing by. Yasmin of Morning Joe First Look. They've got questions for you.
Absolutely.
And I also want to get your take on this.
Imagine a workplace where women don't have to spend extra or any energy fighting for fair pay or defending their rights, but can instead focus that energy on the fullest expression of the task at hand and enjoy both the pride that brings and the product of that pride, which is fair and equal compensation for every woman.
That is actress Michelle Williams standing with House Democrats this week to push for the Paycheck Fairness Act. The bill, which passed the House last week, would make it easier to take legal action over pay discrimination. The legislation has momentum, but still faces an uphill battle in the Senate. Of course, we've been talking about this issue for a long time. And in honor of Equal Pay Day this week, we're launching all kinds of new content at knowyourvalue.com that includes the tools and advice you need to negotiate effectively and to own your voice. You can also get this information delivered directly to your inbox by signing up for the Know Your Value newsletter. Text VALUE to 66866. We have much more with Stacey Abrams when Morning Joe comes right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.